Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you all. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you. So let me say, and I love you back. And I love you back. So let me say, my heart is full today. My heart is full today, full of gratitude for the trust you have placed in me, full of love for our country, and full of resolve. The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up, and as long as we keep fighting. To my beloved Doug and our family, I love you so very much. To President Biden and Dr. Biden, thank you for your faith and support. To Governor Walz and the Walz family, I know your service to our nation will continue. And to my extraordinary team, to the volunteers who gave so much of themselves, to the poll workers and the local election officials, I thank you all. Look, I am so proud of the race we ran, and the way we ran it, Over the 107 days of this campaign, we have been intentional about building community and building coalitions, bringing people together from every walk of life and background, united by love of country with enthusiasm and joy in our fight for America's future. And we did it with the knowledge that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. Now, I know folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it. But we must accept the results of this election. Earlier today, I spoke with President-elect Trump and congratulated him on his victory. I also told him that we will help him and his team with their transition, and that we will engage in a peaceful transfer of power. A fundamental principle of American democracy is that when we lose an election, we accept the results. That principle, as much as any other, distinguishes democracy from monarchy or tyranny. And anyone who seeks the public trust must honor it. At the same time, in our nation, we owe loyalty not to a president or a party, but to the Constitution of the United States. And loyalty to our conscience and to our God. My allegiance to all three is why I am here to say, while I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign. The fight for freedom, for opportunity, for fairness, and the dignity of all people. A fight for the ideals at the heart of our nation, the ideals that reflect America at our best. That is a fight I will never give up. I will never give up the fight for a future where Americans can pursue their dreams, ambitions, and aspirations, where the women of America have the freedom to make decisions about their own body and not have their government telling them what to do. We will never give up the fight to protect our schools and our streets from gun violence. And America, we will never give up the fight for our democracy, for the rule of law, for equal justice, and for the sacred idea that every one of us, no matter who we are or where we start out, has certain fundamental rights and freedoms that must be respected and upheld. And we will continue to wage this fight in the voting booth, in the courts, and in the public square. And we will also wage it in quieter ways, in how we live our lives, by treating one another with kindness and respect, by looking in the face of a stranger and seeing a neighbor, by always using our strength to lift people up, to fight for the dignity that all people deserve. The fight for our freedom will take hard work, but like I always say, we like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work can be joyful work. And the fight for our country is always worth it. It is always worth it. To the young people who are watching, it is, I love you. To the young people who are watching, it is okay to feel sad and disappointed, but please know it's going to be okay. On the campaign, I would often say, when we fight, we win. But here's the thing. Sometimes the fight takes a while. That doesn't mean we won't win. That doesn't mean we won't win. The important thing is don't ever give up. Don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to make the world a better place. You have power. You have power. And don't you ever listen when anyone tells you something is impossible because it has never been done before. You have the capacity to do extraordinary good in the world. And so to everyone who is watching, do not despair. This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves. This is a time to organize, to mobilize, and to stay engaged for the sake of freedom and justice and the future that we all know we can build together. Look, many of you know I started out as a prosecutor, and throughout my career, I saw people at some of the worst times in their lives. People who had suffered great harm and great pain, and yet found within themselves the strength and the courage and the resolve to take the stand, to take a stand, to fight for justice, to fight for themselves, to fight for others. So let their courage be our inspiration. Let their determination be our charge. And I'll close with this. There's an adage an historian once called a law of history, true of every society across the ages. The adage is, only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service. HU. And may that work guide us, even in the face of setbacks, toward the extraordinary promise of the United States of America. I thank you all. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. I thank you all.
With other Democratic AGs across this country to make sure that we would be ready to respond to any attempt to roll back our rights. So here we are. We've studied their platforms. We've identified certain possibilities, fact patterns. We've created contingency plans. So no matter what the next administration throws at us, we're ready. We're ready to respond to their attacks. We're ready to respond to any attempts to cut or eliminate any funding to the great state of New York, as the governor outlined. So despite what has happened on the national stage, we will continue to stand tall in the face of injustice, revenge, or retribution. We will continue to protect our most vulnerable and marginalized amongst us, because it is my sworn duty and responsibility to lead that fight, working with the governor of this great state, Kathy Hochul. This is not the time to be fearful, New York, but faithful and steadfast, knowing that I, as the Attorney General, along with my entire team, we are guardians of the law, and we are prepared, my friends, to fight back. Thank you.
That was maybe the most distasteful speech I've ever seen a government official give after someone won the American presidency. And I think it reflects exactly how Letitia James has been this entire time. She has done everything in her power to destroy Donald Trump. She failed. You know how we know she failed? Because Donald Trump won decisively last night. This lawfare campaign that we have seen waged against Trump by attorneys general, by federal and state prosecutors, and them doing so by twisting the law in ways they had never done before. And we know this, right? This is not just a right-wing talking point. They use the law against Donald Trump in ways they've never used against anyone else in their states, in this country. And the American people spoke loud and clear last night and said, we're done with this. And yet, for the Attorney General of the state of New York to go on and give that speech just now is disgraceful.
And we're going to cut some of it that we missed at the top there. Meanwhile, I want to ask you about Special Counsel Jack Smith evaluating how to wind down 2 federal cases against President-elect Donald Trump, and where you see this going next.
Yeah, those cases go away. And they're winding it down because there's a DOJ policy that says you can't indict a sitting president, meaning you really can't pursue, prosecuting a president. And then you have the state cases. Now, that theory, that DOJ policy, has actually never been tested in the states before. But in the spirit of it, you would hope and you would think that states would do the same. We're still watching the Merchan case, the Judge Merchan case, and that's the Stormy Daniels, the business records case. There's a hearing on that on Tuesday, where Judge Merchan, next Tuesday, he's going to decide whether or not immunity applies to Donald Trump in that case, per the Supreme Court decision. And then, of course, there's still the sentencing date on the books, the week of Thanksgiving.
So your former boss, Bill Barr, penned an op-ed in which he said, for the good of the country, he urges not just the federal prosecutors, but the state prosecutors to drop all of the cases against President-elect Trump.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. It's part of this lawfare campaign that we've been watching for years, for 8 years now. For 8 years, this is what's been happening. And in fact, the former Attorney General and I have been discussing this over the phone throughout the morning and this afternoon. And look, I think what's going to happen next week, for instance, in this hearing on the business records case, is even if Judge Merchan rejects the immunity argument, and I would argue that politically speaking, it's actually a way for him to get out if he wants. If he could get out of it, he can get out of the case. But if he doesn't, what's going to happen is Trump's lawyers are going to appeal that in the hopes of delaying the sentencing. But I would just say this. It would be wrong in the spirit, I think, of fairness and justice to keep that over Donald Trump's head while he's in office. So they may say, oh, look, here's the sentencing. We're just not going to execute on it for, the next 4 years. And if they were to do that, though, I would just, they should really think long and hard about that. Because, again, the reason Donald Trump swept is because of these kinds of legal actions that have been taken against him for the last, I would say.
And to that point, your former boss, the former Attorney General Bill Barr, makes the case that these need to go away now because the American people elected this next president, knowing these allegations against him. He said American people have rendered their verdict on Trump and decisively chosen him to lead the country for the next 4 years. They did that with full knowledge of the claims against him by prosecutors around the country. And I think AG Garland and the state prosecutor should respect the people's decision and dismiss the cases against President Trump right now, which makes the moment that we all just lived through even more remarkable. To your point, Letitia James, this is a few more seconds of what she said. We missed it at the very top. Listen.
We did not expect this result, but we are prepared to respond to this result. And my office has been preparing for several months because we've been here before. We faced this challenge before, and we use the rule of law to fight back. And we are prepared to fight back once again. Because as the Attorney General of this great state, it is my job to protect and defend the rights of New Yorkers and the rule of law. And I will not shrink from that responsibility.
Carrie.
I think when she said to use the rule of law, she misspoke. She meant to say when I abused the law against Trump. And the thing is, and you know who else thinks that, by the way, or seems to think that she abused the law against Donald Trump? The appellate court here in the state of New York. I watched those oral arguments. They were all incredibly skeptical of this civil fraud case that she brought against Trump. You remember this one where they valued Mar-a-Lago between $18 and $20 million and then brought this $500 million judgment against him and used the statute against Donald Trump in a way that had never been used against anyone in the state of New York. I think he's actually going to win that case, and I think that court has been holding that decision for after the election. So we got to wait and see on that one.
What she said right there at the top, we did not expect this result. So, well, what did they expect?
Well, that's the arrogance.
Every time that they threw the book at Trump, it made him stronger. And it just galvanized his supporters to say, this is unfair, what they're doing. And yet they seem to be still, singing out of the same hymnal.
Yep.
They're not, there's no self-reflection going on here. The Democrats are not sitting back and saying, wow, we really screwed this up. Holy mackerel, we threw this whole thing away. What did we do wrong? They're saying, it's like a doctor who goes in to take out your appendix, and instead of taking out your appendix, cuts off your big toe and goes, oh, I got to go back and try it again, do the same thing. Hopefully I'll find an appendix in there somewhere. I mean, they're not getting it.
Well, it's utter arrogance, right? And arrogance blinds people. Arrogance, pride goes before a fall, right? And I think that perhaps she doesn't even see it, which is remarkable to the rest of us. But again, it's because of people like Attorney General Letitia James and the action she's taken that Donald Trump won in the way that he did last.
Obviously, this was not the outcome that we had anticipated. We had expected to at least cling on to one or two of the blue wall states, but unfortunately, it was a full sweep. We were hoping for Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Nebraska, the 2nd Congressional District. So needless to say, it was basically, if anyone has seen Game of Thrones, it was a red wedding. It was a bloodbath. So everyone is in a state of shock. The gender gap that we were pining for did not materialize to the extent, in a meaningful extent. And obviously, youth and Latinos and African Americans, a lot of them went over to Trump. So there's going to be a lot of soul searching in the next couple of days. I hope that we can do an honest assessment and not criticize the people who have ideas and solutions about how we can move forward. Because if we do not acknowledge the rightward turn of America, we're going to keep losing.
Right. Well, you did say in an interview last night that you thought that Tim Walz was part of the problem.
I do. Well, I'm biased. I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm a huge fan of my own governor. He is tremendously popular across the state, and not just in the liberal bastions of Philadelphia and Pittsburgh,
So
but also in the
the big
T.
mistake?
I think it's one of several factors. I think there were several factors that led to this result, but I think definitely contributed to this. And even if Shapiro was only able to bring up the margin by 1% in a campaign of margins, it could have potentially made a huge difference. And perhaps it would have allayed fears of voters in other blue wall states, because Shapiro is famous for being a moderate.
Yeah.
He would have counterbalanced the ticket and reassured the American people that Kamala Harris is not that San Francisco radical that Trump accuses her of being.
Yeah, a lot of people believe that she was just so afraid of losing the Muslim and Arab American vote in Dearborn, Michigan, and that she lost it anyways. A lot of people point to this, Lindy, as the kiss of death for her campaign. Listen here.
If anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
When she said that, the sound of hair being pulled out by her campaign staff was palpable. I mean, was that a huge mistake? Is that where everything turned?
Honestly, not just her campaign staff. That was the statement heard around the world.
Yeah.
Because Americans are dying for a difference. They're dying for a change from the Biden administration. And she needed to go out there and make the case that she wasn't going to be Biden 2.0. She was going to be Harris. Unfortunately, she blurred the lines between the two. That was her opportunity to say, I'm going to take drastic measures to bring down inflation. I'm going to make sure that our border is secure. That was her opportunity. And unfortunately, you know, in The View, the hosts on The View, they're the friendly crowd.
Oh, yeah.
They wanted to give her an opportunity to explain, but unfortunately, she didn't take that. But she did walk back her statement 40 minutes later when she said, I would appoint a Republican to the cabinet. So at that point, she probably realized that she probably should have articulated a more forceful and compelling answer.
So real quickly,
because right now it's a very...
Yeah. Just before we let you go, what does this victory mean for President Trump? Because he went through the crucible to get to where he is today.
I just want to say, as a proud and grateful American, I wish President Trump the best. I wish him every success, because I want our country to succeed. That's just, you know, you can expect Democrats to accept the outcome of the election. There's not going to be an insurrection. There's going to be peaceful transfer of power, and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are going to be there. Congratulations to President Trump, and all of us have to do everything we can to move our country forward.
Look, first of all, good to be with everybody again. Doesn't feel like we've left this set yet. I don't want to be critical of those that worked on the Biden campaign, as Jen O'Malley did, and now this campaign. I do think the larger issue for me is, I think some of the things that Jackie was reporting on. Democrats need to take a step back. We are out of touch with where the majority of the country wants to go. I think some of the criticism being leveled at President Trump is unwarranted. The notion of our democracy is dead, or the democracy is dormant, or the democracy is in disrepair, those conversations should stop. We seem now to be a party more interested in entertaining than engaging. We have the biggest entertainers, the biggest actors come out and say things, and it really rallies the elites in our party. If we want sustainable solutions to housing and education shortcomings, cultural impositions that we're placing on people, then we need to think about those things and get serious about a new message there before we think about our messaging. We don't seem to have a purpose right now. This is something we can gather. Now, I think it's right that some to say she got in this race at a short period of time she only had, and maybe she chose the wrong VP. All that may be true. But we still should have run a campaign with a purpose and with a message. That's what I take from this, and I hope that those who are serious about this reckoning, I hope that's what they take from it as well.
They were saying that the prices of groceries were a problem. They see that their grown children are having a hard time affording housing. Car insurance is crushing them. They're like, how in the world did this boy end up on my girls' volleyball team? What is going on? And so I am not entirely surprised. And I actually think he could have probably made it even a greater gains with those women had they focused a little bit more, less on the bros and more on them. But who cares? He won them, and it doesn't matter. But it must have been really weird for Biden and Harris to call and congratulate Hitler. I mean, I think that one of the things that happened is Future Forward, the PAC, said to them through smoke signals in the New York Times, that message is not working. And what did she do in the last week? She stopped talking about it. She didn't say anything bad about him. She was just trying to go back to being positive. And they misread it once again. And so all of those things that they told themselves and they told everybody else, inflation's not a problem, it's a high-class problem, et cetera.
Well, I would just say this. I don't think she would have benefited from more exposure.
Right.
And in fact, I remember saying back at the time when Biden pulled out that the Democrats could still have the last laugh if they could field a credible candidate. Well, the time was short. She was female in a party that is partial to females, African American, and already vice president. There was probably no stopping her. But if she'd had to run with other candidates in the race with a meaningful primary election, I don't think there's a chance she'd have won.
No, we've seen that before. We've seen that show before in 2019.
So they would have been, the Democrats would have been better off without her, but by the time it happened, there was kind of no choice.
She had the best on-the-job training in the world. She was vice president for 3.5 years, and she blew it.
When she leaves office, she's not going back to the Senate right away. She's a private citizen. What future does she have? What would she have to do? How should she start this moment if she wants to have a future in politics?
Well, first of all,
defiance. Would that work?
Do we think that the candidate that we saw, not only in 2019 but throughout this process now, could be a successful candidate anywhere? Because this was a historic loss. I mean, historic.
Right.
I think the answer is no. From the Democratic Party, I don't hear her name anywhere talked about in the future. And not only is this the first day of the rest of her life, this is the first day of the 2028 Democratic primary. And there are lots of governors and senators. I know, I'm sorry.
Can we take a couple days?
But, you know,
It was still Christmas.
That's how quickly she'll be forgotten.
And that's how quickly these governors, Josh Shapiro, Wes Moore, Gretchen Whitmer, Pete Buttigieg, I promise you, they are talking to their teams today, and they're going to talk to them about how to rebuild this party that today is very, very broken.
Can we do winners and losers while we got a moment?
Sure.
When she leaves office, she's not going back to the Senate right away. She's a private citizen. What future does she have? What would she have to do? How should she start this moment if she wants to have a future in politics?
Well, first of all,
defiance. Would that work?
Do we think that the candidate that we saw, not only in 2019 but throughout this process now, could be a successful candidate anywhere? Because this was a historic loss. I mean, historic.
Right.
I think the answer is no. From the Democratic Party, I don't hear her name anywhere talked about in the future. And not only is this the first day of the rest of her life, this is the first day of the 2028 Democratic primary. And there are lots of governors and senators. I know, I'm sorry.
Can we take a couple days?
But, you know,
It was still Christmas.
That's how quickly she'll be forgotten.
And that's how quickly these governors, Josh Shapiro, Wes Moore, Gretchen Whitmer, Pete Buttigieg, I promise you, they are talking to their teams today, and they're going to talk to them about how to rebuild this party that today is very, very broken.
Can we do winners and losers while we got a moment?
Sure.
He loves a game, this guy.
My winners are the garbage people of America.
Yes.
Because that was a thunderous comment that reverberated in a way that, I mean, the Harris team had to hate that.
President Biden saying it.
Absolutely. And it took you right back to Hillary Clinton 2016 and just how the left and Democrats they've never respected Trump, and they've never respected the people who support him. And it's still there, guys.
Mm-hmm. By the way,
it didn't just disappear because you got more of a minority vote, more Puerto Ricans voting for you, more Hispanics or blacks, but it's still there. It's alive and it's present in American politics and society still.
I think it started at 3 a.m. this morning, actually. I mean, this was such a surprising landslide for Democrats. This wasn't just losing by a little bit. And I think that conversation has already started. We see it playing out publicly. But now Donald Trump has to govern starting January 20th, and that is difficult. As we said earlier, he will likely have unified Republican government. You know, House, Senate, majority on the Supreme Court. He has promised to fix things, bring down costs. It's really hard to bring down a lot of costs once they've gone up. There are some things he can do, not many. The intractable war in the Middle East. He has a good relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu. He has thoughts on this. He worked on this in his first term. That's a really tough one to fix. And so at some point, you know, he will never be able to run for president again. This is his final term in office. And he will have to deliver. And they will be solely responsible as the Republican Party for answering to voters in 2 short years. I know we need some sleep before we start talking about the midterms,
Yes.
but there are really tough problems that he can't just fix with a phone and a pen, as people used to say about Barack Obama. The southern border, he can do things right away on, and I expect that he will. And I think it's one of the mistakes of the Biden administration that they in a knee-jerk way, took some of those off. But there's a lot of things he can't fix right away, and he will have to deliver.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.